Good afternoon. Today we'll be talking to you about dark tourism. Dark tourism, also called thanatourism, although being vastly popular and growing at an increasing rate, does not have a clear definition of its tourism niche. In layman's terms, it is exploring and visiting sites of significance historically where something tragic involving death has occurred. Lennon and Foley defined it as events that have taken place in recent times which force a visitor to question modernity. People are always interested in tragedies and things involving death. Examples like the tombs of the pharaohs in Egypt. In addition to architectural masterpieces that have puzzled people for centuries, it is also a place meant to honour the dead kings of the past. Or the Colosseum, where in ancient Rome men fought against each other to bring self-worth. Visitors may wish to gain an understanding of what has come before them, and for some to connect on a spiritual level to those that were past, or even as a way to gain respect to those who have come before them, more commonly used for sites of battlefields or great tragedies such as Pearl Harbor, but also events that have changed the world, especially places that have had impacts both politically and with social policies. Nostalgia plays an important role in the world of dark tourism. Mourning for the impossibility of mythical return, for the loss of an enchanted world with clear borders and values. It could be a secular expression of a spiritual longing. Nostalgia is missing something that can never quite be the same, like remembering a favourite movie as a child, watching it as an adult, and then not quite living up to your expectations. The chapter talks about two different forms of nostalgia, restorative and reflective. Restorative is action-based, while reflective is emotion-based. Dark tourism may be an alternative way of experiencing virtual nostalgia, where a person visits a place in an attempt to emotionally understand what has happened here before, most commonly with great modern tragedies such as Ground Zero, Hiroshima, and Auschwitz. However, with an increasing amount of horrible events happening in the world around us, not all these places lead to becoming dark tourism locations. For some locations, in a business sense, promoting it as a place to visit is either culturally or emotionally devastating for the community at large. A list of stages has been outlined that some tourism experts believe lead to the development of dark tourism locations. Staging, arranging, contextualise and thematise. Staging does not mean falsification. It means to give access and understanding to an event that took place. Arrangements are also so that people that are visiting have places for necessities such as food, water, and access for medical attention, if required. The example used by the chapter is that of concentration camps. Would you want to eat something immediately after leaving one of the horrendous gas chambers? Or would you prefer a moment of silent reflection? Things such as these must be considered. Context is a major part of all sites all over the world, to allow for people to truly understand what has happened right on the ground they are walking on. Lastly, what is the purpose behind the site and bringing people's attention to it? Is it merely to show that a country is horrible, or was capable of terrible things, or is it to encourage change in the people in the world that come to visit? It is understandable that this form of tourism is not for everyone, but for some there is something about being in a place where some of the worst things to happen to nations ever gives a sense of understanding and reflection. Growth of this market could be attributed to an ever-changing diversity and interest in the world. With much easier access to the world than ever before, and with a relative ease of visiting countries that once wouldn't have been possible, tourism is a growing market. The wants of people wishing to experience dark tourism is one that will develop their understanding of the weight and meaning behind some of the culturally and potentially world-changing locations. Visiting locations associated with death often promote deeper thinking within people and emotional responses that sometimes may seem out of the ordinary. Next up we have Lachlan.
Morning. When you think of tourism or tourists, you may think blue skies and sunny days, whether that be relaxing on a cruise ship, walking along the beach, or navigating your way through the cities of Europe. But for some, this sort of attraction may not fancy them. Some tourists travel the world in search of paranormal activity or to reflect on our most innocent on our not-so-innocent past as a society. For some tourists, the attraction of a war site, abandoned prison, cemetery, or where some sort of heart-stopping tragedy has taken place may interest them. This type of tourism, dubbed dark tourism, is the act of tourists opting to visit dark sites motivated by the unknown, unusual, and paranormal. One of the largest recorded target markets for dark tourism is the youth market, from 18 to 25 years of age. The main factors that drive this target market into visiting dark tourism landmarks is a fascination with death or anything associated with it. Although death is a touchy subject for many, and a rather harsh one to discuss, many people, especially the youth target market, are curious to understand more about it. But dark tourism doesn't just cater to those who are fascinated with the paranormal. Dark tourism goes hand in hand with heritage tourism, as many dark tourism sites are shared with that of heritage tourism. Heritage and dark tourism's locations are based on historic landmarks, with half of dark tourism's landmarks being haunted old heritage listed buildings, with the other half being historic landmarks, like that of Pearl Harbor, Ground Zero, New York, or Ground Zero in New York. Many believe the cause of such tourism of this nature is the vast human traits such as ethical reasons and educational purposes, as well as empathy and curiosity. With accordance to the Anzac Day tour, hosted in southeast Queensland, the target market would exceed that of just a youth market, with the Anzac tour incorporating an age group well over 30 years of age. The Anzac tour would also appeal to veterans, family members, American and Japanese soldiers of World War II, as many soldiers were based in southeast of Queensland. Its historic value would also appeal to school-age children studying history in secondary school, the 12 to 17 years of age, but would still be classified dark tourism due to the nature of the landmarks within the Anzac tour. The locations of the Anzac tour of southeast Queensland, which includes many historical military sites from the heart of the Asia-Pacific War, such as General MacArthur's office in Brisbane, to Anzac Square, just around the corner, or even the Maritime Museum, would appeal to the older half of the target market, those over 30 years of age, and secondary school-age children, as the historical aspect of the tour is fascinating to the history-orientated dark tourism travellers. These historical aspects is what would truly grasp these target markets. Not to exclude the youth market bracket of 18 to 25 years of age, the main target market for dark tourism, the paranormal aspect would seep through, as that market would satisfy themselves with thoughts of paranormal activity at each of the locations on the tour. The thought of being at such historical places, which is based around tragic events and the possibility of paranormal sightings, would truly keep that target market interested. But to keep that market interested when not sightseeing, the nightlife aspect of the tour, which includes dinner and RSL, would keep our youth market interested, as it involves socialising with locals and potentially retired servicemen. Many of the locations within the Anzac tour of southeast Queensland may appeal predominantly to the youth market bracket of 18 to 25 years of age, but doesn't exclude the older half of this target market. To really lock in this already unique market, the most adrenaline-orientated part of this trip could exceed expectations and could satisfy the broad market as a whole. The school-age, youth, and older target market might find the optional ride in a jet quite satisfying, as it tapped into adrenaline tourism, but still, due to the significance of the aircraft, will be listed under dark and heritage tourism. I'll now pass back to Danyon to complete the presentation.
Dark tourism locations can be found all over, in all corners of the globe, but most commonly, locations of these sites are based in Europe due to their long and troubled history. Today, however, I'll be focusing on two sites outside of Europe. The estimated most popular site in the world relating to dark tourism is Ground Zero, a site of what used to be the World Trade Center buildings that were destroyed in 2001 during terrorist attacks taking place in the United States. Nearly 3,000 people were killed during the attack, and was a major factor in the America's lead to the war on terrorism during the early 2000s. Annual events are held there in remembrance of these events. Another noteworthy location is at Hiroshima in Japan, when on the 6th of August 1945, nearing the end of the Second World War, and with no look of Japan surrendering, America decided to drop the world's first atomic bomb on the city. 80,000 people were killed at the initial explosion above the city. However, many more would die in the following days, months, and years due to radiation they were exposed to. There are currently tours. Now there are tours of the city that were once destroyed, along with Peace Memorial, in an attempt to honour the dead. The Peace Memorial is a building that also called the Peace Memorial, also called the Atomic Bomb Dome, serves as a memorial for the people that were killed. I'll now pass on to Jordan.
Our product proposal, a standard trip and Anzac special, held annually every year, just like that of Ground Zero. We would like to create a dark tourism concept like no other, incorporating Australian war pastime with modern special interest characteristics. As stated earlier, strategically targeting our markets for proposal will need to be acute. The tiered AWS, the tourism of Australian war significance, will aim to not only challenge South East Queensland, but Australia's idea of tourism, but the tourists themselves. A powerful message capturing the importance of Australia's war-serving veterans. This will be the first of its kind in Australia. It doesn't stop at tourism. We plan to use TAWS to actively educate and give back to communities of those who have served us or are still affected by the traumatic experiences faced in battle. What does the package offer? MacArthur Office in Brisbane. A dark concept. A wreath laying in the Anzac Square of Brisbane City. A maritime museum in South Bank. A function, a higher tea, a guest speaker of Naval or Amy Percent. Historic and dark tourism and gastronomic interests will be included. Kangaroo Point, food and wine package, gastronomic interests. Day 2. Fort Light, located where Brisbane Port is the heart of Brisbane's Army facility. Caboolture Warplane Museum. Redcliffe War Track on the beach. An afternoon tea in the location set for a beach for natural and special interests such as natural and adventure. Day 3, an Anzac special, only held annually every year. A dawn service, a breakfast, a lunch at the Brisbane RSL, followed by marches and a trip to the museum, only open on Anzac Day. 2 up at the Fox Hotel. Day 4, the RWF Amberley base, a trip around the base to explore and inherit yourself in a lot of the Army base facilities. The Archerfield jet and helicopter experience, the Ipswich Army Museum at Queen's Port. That will end the depart of the last day. Why South East Queensland? In tourism, location is important. Richard Branson once said, for a destination to be popular, it must be within a realistic travel time of airports or transportation or small cities. Close to the red jet is the commonly preferred term. In this case, our demands is to occupy Brisbane's southeast. Is not only based on the richness of our heritage in war culture, but its potential to grow and shape and cater for all markets of diverse backgrounds and special interests. Queensland, where there is no other greater state, where you can cruise down the infamous iconic stretching river far and wide to the sea. Take a seat in a plane and exceed speeds never thought was possible. Hear firsthand the stories of past veterans in Queensland's most prestigious maritime museums. It is without these modules of tourism-based business frameworks we can capture interest from all other levels of government, schools, TAFEs, unis, specifically to capture our overseas markets. Our competition, there is none, and is incomparable to attractions such as the Great Barrier Reef, the Gold Coast theme parks, or food and music affiliated festivals. This is Queensland's first, by expanding into a market that has never currently or been exaggerated equal to the product before. We are the leaders, thus the benchmark for any others wishing to compete for this market sector. As market leaders, and with high quality of our product range included activities, we are able to bring diversity to the subject that has never been done before. This holds a very significant part in people's lives. War. Perhaps dark tourism potential rivals some of Queensland's most apex and tourist destinations due to its unparalleled competitive edge. Attractions. By selecting 3 major attractions to utilise the TAWS concept, this will ensure we capture target markets' interest. This is achieved by diversity broadcasting the 3 main aspects of the package. One example is a jet or helicopter ride. amid dark targets and historic and adventure-based tourism potentials. Secondly, the MacArthur offers a Kangaroo Point walk, a dining experience, and catered for our dark and historic and gastronomical tourists. Lastly, the Maritime Museum and Redcliffe War Trial, complemented by afternoon tea. This is presenting broad advantages to disassemble the dark target, natural, historic, and gastronomic. That concludes today's presentation. Thank you for listening.